Hello, my name is Jen. Welcome back to my channel. I don't have an intro, but I do have a story for you today. This video is going to be very Sweden-centered, but I think Sweden is a good example to point out when talking about feminist hypocrisy, which is something I like to talk about on this channel. Swedish feminists have started a so-called women's strike, this time for another MeToo situation, and I have some thoughts that I wanted to share with you today. The first part of this video is going to be about that MeToo case involving Göran Lambertz, a top lawyer in Sweden. If you don't want to hear about that part but want to hear about the protest, you can jump to this part of the video. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Göran Lambertz is a 71-year-old top lawyer who was recently accused of He was taken to court by an anonymous young woman that we're going to choose to call Jane Doe throughout this part. In this case, he was the one who chose to go public with his name and face after the media had been speculating for some time about who this top lawyer could be. The investigation into Göran Lambertz was dropped and no charges were made against him. After his release from jail, he chose to make a press conference wherein he clumsily explains himself using terms such as "I was weak in spirit and flesh" and "I don't grope, I caress," or something to that effect. I'm not really quite sure how to translate the slang word that he used, but gross. He made himself sound like a complete creep, and he also name-dropped the women who wanted to be anonymous, which is an obviously very poor taste and a shitty thing to do. When I first heard the press conference, and by the way, I want to add that all media removed this press conference. They listened to critique and then they removed it. But when I first heard the press conference, I thought that feminists and Jane Doe should be happy because now they can probably reopen the case, because it sounded very incriminating. Like he couldn't say no, like he was admitting fault in the situation. But it turns out that feminists view this as being slanderous, because what he meant was that she came on to him and he was too weak to say no, which they say is slanderous in nature. They obviously claim that this is the patriarchy at work. So where a man is allowed to speak freely whilst women are not, that men and women are not equal before the law, that this case and all other rape cases that don't lead to a charge are because men in private and men in the justice system don't believe women. I don't believe this. I think that this is complete bullcrap, because a man does not have to be charged in court for the public to completely buy into him being a confirmed rapist and him subsequently losing his reputation and his career. We've seen this with the Swedish Lasse Kronér, Fredrik Virtanen, Martin Timell, and a lot of men involved in MeToo scandals internationally, where no charges were made, but careers were ruined nonetheless. This tells me we have a culture which highly trusts women and who highly disrespects men who would hurt them, not the other way around. I do agree with the feminists that the rate at which we prosecute rapists and the punishments that we give are too low. I just don't think that the problem is that men don't believe women. I think it's way more complex than that. A rape case cannot be judged by word alone, as both men and women do lie. I think we need more resources in place to improve the way in which rape and sexual assault cases are dealt with, and I think we need to make sure women report straight away and they trust the justice system enough to do so. But the problem with Me Too was that the public were the first to know in a lot of these cases, and there was sort of a public court prosecution, which I find unfit for a civilized society. To go back and add to the story with Göran Lambertz, it turns out that this woman could be a serial accuser. She has made 4 accusations since 2015. She is currently on trial for slander for another case, and her case from 2018 is eerily similar to this one. I won't go into, I was thinking, I've recorded this video twice before and I included a little bit more details about the case, but my point with this video is not to defend a 71-year-old man who thinks that it's a good idea to drink with a 30-year-old and think that I don't want to I don't feel the need to defend himself, and also he seems very keen on doing that for himself and digging his own hole, so I'm gonna let him do that, honestly. My thing with this case is that I'm just confused as to how this case is what would enrage feminists enough to start a women's right in Sweden. If Greta can do it, then so can we, sounds the encouragements on social media, where feminists are now getting ready to start a new strike. This time for women's issues because of this trial and subsequent press release with Göran Lambertz. Now my first thought is, how come feminists only get the idea to protest when it comes to cases involving these powerful men? Why was there no protest in solidarity with Tommy Lind's friend, who was first under knife threat, then watched her friend Tommy be murdered by that same man with that same knife, and was then raped again by him? I saw or heard no feminist talk about this woman. Why was there no protest when Ahmed Mahmoud was able to make a murder attempt on a 9-year-old girl in the woods on his parole for a serious sex offense towards a child? Or why not rally around this incredible woman who was attacked and on her way home and then had to pursue her own legal case? The man was acquitted in the district court, but after Elina on her own pursued the case to the Court of Appeal, he was convicted. She says that she lost everything that had previously defined her after that night, and she found no other way but to quit almost all of her courses in school. She described it as if her body psychologically almost gave up. For this crime, the 23-year-old man was charged with 2 years in prison and 10 years deportation. A new study recently came out showing that 60% of rapists in Sweden are immigrants. According to BRÅ, rapes have increased by 44% in the last 10 years. This is what the world's first feminist government has done for women in Sweden. Because of the politically correct culture we have here, the article in which this study is presented has to include the most far-fetched explanations. We think that part of the explanation is due to a high degree of mental health issues, drug abuse, social issues, bad grades, and so on. It can also be that a victim is more prone to report someone if the crime is committed by someone who feels more foreign to them and who has low social status. How did they come to these conclusions, I wonder? What is this based on? So bad grades makes someone a rapist. Now, I'm pretty sure if this explanation was to be used on a white man, feminist head would be exploding. There's no proof for this statement whatsoever. It's taken out of the blue, and I think it's appalling, actually. Another attempt to explain their findings away was that it is also conceivable that immigrants commit more rapes based on the fact that they may come from a culture where women do not behave like Swedish women. They are not allowed to party and drink alcohol, for example, and then some boys, note how they say boys as well, fuck you. And then some boys can interpret it as girls who do it implicitly have said yes to sex. And she then has to relativize this. She has to relativize this by claiming that Swedish men have had this view of rape and women not too long ago. And I just want to know when. When did men regard Swedish women drinking alcohol as a way that she has said yes to sex? Because the statistics do not support this. And she like I said, she has no proof for this whatsoever. And like, Sweden used to be safe. Swedish women, we have a culture here where Swedish women were able to sunbathe topless without anyone batting an eye. And I mean, Sweden is known for being extremely liberal when it comes to these things. And Swedish women used to be safe. But feminists need you to not listen to your elders or your parents even, and they need you to think that Sweden has always been the way that it is today. They really want to pretend that they will be the ones to improve our situation, as if they have not been part of creating the problem all along. These protests are mainly about men's violence towards women and how feminists believe that the law treats them differently than men. I am all for criticizing the criminal justice system of Sweden and talking about these issues facing women today, but feminists will not be the ones to save us. Not with empty platitudes like the ones we see on the streets of these protests. It's the same type of demands that they always make, which are too broad, too empty, and too unspecific to implement. Men need to stop being violent. Men need to stop raping and take accountability as a gender. Abortion needs to be legal in all countries. Men need to start taking men's violence towards women seriously. The criminals should be punished, not the victim. Change now. We should be equal before the law. And it's like, what are we going to do with these demands? And what is the government going to do with these demands? Cissi Wallin, who was one of the most driving forces in the Swedish MeToo movement and has been a main figure in these protests, had this wonderful demand as well. That Swedish legislation on defamation needs to be changed so that it better protects women who want to use their constitutionally protected freedom of expression to tell their story. The reason that she wants this is because she herself has been prosecuted for defamation for publicly accusing a famous man of rape, resulting in him losing his career and having his character completely assassinated. He was never charged for anything, but she was charged with defamation. And I was thinking about this. She's the only woman I know who has been charged with defamation or anything similar to that after what happened during Me Too. And I think it's almost like she's just mad that she couldn't write an entire book slandering a man without facing consequences. And then she had to start a whole strike about it. And also, how exactly is she going to change the law here? What exactly does she want? Does she not think that this will also affect women and not just men? And aren't feminists just the type to want to silence hurtful speech? It does not make any sense. Feminists want to protect women against dangerous men, by which they mean white men who haven't taken any courses in gender studies, all while keeping the borders open, filling up with men from cultures where women are second-class citizens, and men who, like the researcher I quoted earlier said, thinks girls having fun and drinking alcohol means she's already said yes to sex and is free to rape. The politics of the first feminist government in the world has resulted in a more unsafe environment for women, and yet feminists say that they will be the ones to change that and keep us safe. I somehow don't trust them. The Swedish justice system is broken. The punishments are disrespectfully low. The police don't have enough resources, but instead of focused criticism, feminists will choose the men versus women narrative because it is a man-hating ideology. Feminists want us to turn against all men. They want us to be scared of our own husbands, our own sons, our own male colleagues and friends. But good men will be the ones to protect us from the bad men, and they don't have to take accountability for what the bad men do because they share gender to do so. Feminists think that they speak for all women, but they do not. I would love for feminists to see their own hypocrisy and for them to see that they do not speak for women. So I was thinking of starting a little strike of my own. If you want to join me, use their hashtag kvinnostrejk, or in English, women's strike, and the hashtag women's strike against feminism to share your message. It would be really cool to see. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a while, so I'm a bit rusty, but I hope to see you next time, so make sure to subscribe. Bye!